confines of the property itself.
Okay.
So
Do you think you could kind of first walk us through it, then we'll talk to some of the...
100%.
Yeah,
I'd like to
yeah.
first bring up David Besh. I'd like to introduce two more exhibits.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, I have David Besh here, who you're familiar with, is the vice president of Nelson Engineering, but he's also a certified landscape architect. And I do have a professional planner here to also offer planning testimony. So Mark left off with A5, and we have copies to hand out, is just an aerial of the subject site. A6 is a color rendered version of the site. Oh, thank you. I never get help. Thanks. And while we're passing out, if we could just have Dave sworn. Thank you. And his credentials on the record.
You swear testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, self God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just state your name for the record.
David Besch, B-O-E-S-C-H, with the firm Nelson Engineering Associates.
And what license do you hold at this time?
I'm a licensed landscape architect in good standing in the state of New Jersey, and state of Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anything else?
Right. And you're also testifying as project manager and vice president of Nelson Engineering.
That's correct.
Okay. So, Dave, if you could just, using the aerial, walk the board what's existing there today. I think that the board chair did a good job reading in the summary of the resolution with regard to the parking deficiency that we have then versus now, and then let's talk about what we're doing to go forward. And just to the extent that there's public here, we did bring extra sets if there is.
Okay, just to orient the board to the property location, even though you probably don't need it. The property is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Sunset Avenue and Logan Road. It is a developed site. It contains a two-story medical office building, and the entire building is circumnavigated with its existing traffic circulation and parking spaces for that use. As Jennifer had mentioned, there are only 65 parking spaces on the property today, and 114 spaces are required for the use under current zoning standards. There is only one access point to the property located at the northwest corner of the property, taking access off of Sunset Avenue.
And that's just, I'm sure the board members recognize it, but immediately to our west is Sunset Farm Market, and immediately west of that is 7-Eleven, then CVS, then the highway.
Correct.
Okay.
Don't need this anymore. So the proposal is to expand the parking area on the east side of the property, where there's only a single loaded traffic aisle on the east side that only has parking adjacent to the building, to widen the pavement slightly to that side to allow for a double stacked traffic aisle. As a result, we're able to add 24 additional spaces, bringing the site total up to 89. Still not conforming to the 114, but far superior to the 65 parking spaces that are there.
And Dave, I know that I said it in my opening, but we're not proposing to make any changes to the building, meaning we're not adding offices, we're not adding doctors, we're not changing the operation at all. This is merely to accommodate the existing facility.
That's correct.
So we're not generating any new traffic, and we're not generating any new parking concerns.
Correct.
Okay. And as it relates to the driveway, I don't think you got to that one yet.
Correct.
Let me just, hold on for a second. So just so everybody knows, we're going to listen to what's going to be discussed here by the applicant. We're going to talk to our professionals. We're going to have board members ask questions. And at some point, people in the that are here today can come up to the mic and make comments from what they hear. Okay? So until then, just hang on and listen to how it all goes. Okay? Thanks.
So in order to address the concerns regarding access, a secondary access point is proposed adjacent to Logan Road. But because this is a signalized intersection, we're proposing that that access be as far as possible from the intersection itself.
So Dave, if someone was leaving the site today, the only way to head west on Sunset would be to wait and try and find a gap to make a left turn out.
That's correct. They would be crossing two lanes of traffic because you do have the queue for the left turn from Sunset Avenue onto Logan Road North. And the double yellow line.
Okay, and so in this scenario, we could make a left turn out onto Logan, come to the signalized intersection, and then make the left turn
Correct.
safely. And then obviously this would be a bypass from anyone also wanting to go north on 35. They could make a right out, go down Logan to the highway, and then make the right there.
I have trouble following your directions.
Oh, she's right.
Right out the driveway.
No. If they wanted to
Oh.
go, they could make the right out, hit the signal, and go around, or make the left to go
Fairmont.
right. So
Yeah.
this way, it's just giving an alternative way to get there.
Correct.
I apologize. I didn't mean to be confusing to you. I just.
Right, so we're all going to have some questions about the exiting off to Logan Road because we kind of have some of the heebie-jeebies about that, for more less of a technical term. So we're going to want to talk about that for a second. So I just want to make sure that you kind of knew that, talk about that, and ask you
Okay.
some questions.
Sure.
Okay, keep going.
Well, do you want us to take a break here and have you ask questions there?
Well, I think some of the discussions that we probably want to have is what would be the we're I guess a little concerned of people making left turns onto Logan Road. That there's already, for people who live in that area, they already have a problem kind of getting onto Logan Road and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things we were kind of wondering is, or thinking about, was what's the downside of making that a right turn only going onto Logan Road, coming out of that?
The areas of concern in Logan Road, are you saying areas of concern south of the site or north of the
Yeah,
site?
what are the concerns, Mr. Weinstein?
That Logan's going to back up into Sunset because this intersection is very, very heavily trafficked. Somebody's going to try to make the left turn, and you're going to have the same issue you're getting right now that you're getting out of Sunset Avenue, where you got all these people cutting over all this traffic, trying to stop it. And I think there's a general consensus that if you do try to make that left, that you're just going to log jam even more of what's going to happen. So if we force people to go right, they want to go back to 35. Call it a big urban jug handle, as you will. You go down Logan Road, you come back around if you want to go the other way. But I think trying to allow people to go, what is that, north on Logan would just be...
Okay, so, and then my question is, what about the people who want to leave and head west on Sunset? How would they get to the same location?
They'd probably have to go around it.
Go around twice. They have to go
Or
around
they'd have to make the left out onto Sunset now, which is,
Which, I'm not too happy about that either. But
You can make a right on Logan and then make a right on 35. Go around Sunoco and come back up.
okay, and this is all just to,
Or go around the bank, I mean.
again, and I understand the concerns, and we, obviously, since we're not changing the use, traffic, we didn't anticipate it until there were some postings recently, anticipate any concerns with regard to traffic. We thought actually making
no,
a,
I don't think we have a problem, or at least I don't necessarily have a problem with the traffic internally.
No,
it's
no.
more about once they exit that. I'm
understood,
concerned about.
and what I'm trying to say is we didn't necessarily think there would be any concern with regard to putting traffic onto Logan Road, because it would be improving Sunset by alleviating that, number one. And number two, the amount of traffic that comes and goes from this office, were a traffic study done, would demonstrate that there isn't enough that would create the queue or the kind of backup that you're expressing concern about. I'd like to listen to the rest of it and hear all the concerns, and it may be that my client wants to return with a traffic engineer to address that, or may be happy to agree to the right turn out only. We're not there yet, so
Yep.
I'm not sure. So I want to give you that heads up. We weren't prepared for this concern because it didn't show up in any of the reports. And typically that is the heads up as to, what the pinch point
So-
is.
Totally
It's also
understand.
August 26th, so traffic is, we're waiting for everybody to leave on Monday, so, traffic's of mind around here, so.
Understood 100%. And I don't know that the summer influx necessarily has any impact on what
It
goes on
always
here.
has an impact on everything around here. That's why we all live here, is for our traffic woes.
Okay.
So why don't you want to continue?
Okay, so we're in conjunction with the pavement widening for the parking spaces. We are also proposing a stormwater mitigation system basically large diameter pipes located under the new pavement area to handle and control the additional storm water that's generated by these proposed improvements. Again, it's stored underneath the pavement in large diameter pipes and slowly discharged out to the existing storm drain system located in Sunset Avenue.
And there's no stormwater management now that we're aware of, correct?
That's correct.
So it will be an even though we're addressing everything that we're adding, so if there's any concern. And as it relates to the trees, our plans had indicated a tree removal plan, and it's a double and somewhat staggered triple row of these pines along our eastern property line. We're really only we're leaving the outside row there.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to address some comments Mr. Higgins made in his letter with regard to the calculation of the removal and any associated costs, what the tree removal plan did not show was the species of the trees. Of the trees in that eastern area, all but one are coniferous trees. There was one deciduous tree, a 24-inch diameter locust tree, that has a different value associated with it for replacement. By my calculation, with that one deciduous tree, 19 coniferous trees, we would be required to replace 22, equivalent of 22 trees.
No. You're taking 20 down, you're required to replace 20.
But doesn't it say conifers over
What?
10 foot of
No.
height?
No. No.
Okay.
Regardless of what the planner and the landscape architect believe, we're going to comply regardless.
We'll comply.
Okay,
So-
which means replacement trees have to be a minimum 4-inch caliber. They're shown 3-inch on the plan.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just a point. I'm sure you have no problem.
No,
doing
not at
it.
all.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem complying, and one of the other things we're doing that we don't get credit for is because right now there's no buffer at the eye level, and because we're introducing parking along the east property line, we're proposing a solid shrub that could grow up to 3 to 4 feet high. Correct?
Correct. It would be an evergreen shrub, so that would be year-round screening of any vehicles or headlights that would be present in those new parking spaces.
Okay.
And those are the only changes to the site, right?
Correct. And with regard to lighting from Mr. Matlack's letter, we will revisit the lighting plan to bring it into compliance.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions for this? And before I ask Jim and Bennett some of their comments, no? Okay.
And just one more thing, Mr. Weinstein,
Yeah.
to add. I'm sorry, to the extent that Jim has suggestions as to tree placement
Mm-hmm.
or additional trees along that eastern property line, we're always happy to work with them.
Okay, good. Did you have some things, Zach?
I have a question. Have you considered one entrance being one entryway being entrance only and one exit only?
We had not looked at that alternative now.
Okay.
It would be.
If we were to make it,
I currently know I'm one of those people going east on Sunset Avenue that will stop in front of this entryway and alleviate it out. I don't see you're not changing. I just don't see it's adding another entryway is going to, change anything if we're not changing the volume of the building and who's entering and exiting it. So, just a comment.
So my doctor's office is in that building. I've been there a lot, so I can, it would help me. I'm coming from the other direction, so, but not being selfish for the community, I don't think it's a bad idea to have the big.
Because at this point of the compass directions, west, north, and east approaches all have to cross over Sunset Avenue to enter the site.
what I could say, Mr. Montes, is that if we were going to consider making Sunset an in only, we certainly couldn't limit them left and rights on the way out. I mean, it would just be a much worse much less
Is that an
desirable
option?
situation.
One is a right only and one's both ways.
Well, that's what we were.
Well, that's what was suggested
That's what we just
from
suggested.
Mr. Duffy, was that Logan Road would be a right out only. And again, it doesn't necessarily address my client's concerns of for the clientele that are coming there, but that's something we can talk about and say. Obviously, I didn't have a chance to talk to her about it yet.
Okay. We'll get back to that after we talk to
Okay.
these guys. Okay. Yep.
Can you put the aerial back up for a second? So, in the lower, I guess it would be the southwest corner of the site, southeast corner. Sorry. If you look right onto the street, this is my one concern. So there's a car parked there, and we're talking about putting an egress from this site, which would change some of the on-street parking dynamics there. Not the traffic engineer, but just going through there multiple times a day, parking closer to Sunset seems not the safest, especially since cars back up. So what would this do to the current on-street parking situation if you added another exit there?
Well, clearly, it would eliminate those spaces in the area of the access point, and a reasonable distance from that as a no parking zone to maintain clear sight distances. So yes, it would reduce the on-street parking. I don't recall if that's already posted for stopping or standing, but again, I don't recall.
Well, Dave, the exit it'll be 34 feet, so that's the equivalent of a space and a half, really,
Correct.
under your ordinance. So it would be the equivalent of about a space and a half, and it wouldn't have any impact on parking on the east side of Logan Road, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there's no required like offset. You don't have to have no parking within a certain number of feet of the driveway.
Okay.
You do have to have no parking within a certain distance from the intersection. But the testimony is correct that it's just whatever space they're taking up for the driveway itself that would be the parking eliminated.
Okay.
Okay.
Just a question. How did the site, because I couldn't tell from the materials, how did the site become out of compliance to begin with?
It was approved that way in 1997.
Okay, was a variance at that time?
Mm-hmm.
1997 or
1979.
79 maybe.
Yeah, no, we got the 78.
Yeah, 78,
79,
79. And interestingly enough, and I don't know what the calculation was, but it was more deficient then than it is today, which to me is crazy, but it was. I don't know how they calculated it.
I was not the chairman at the time,
No,
so.
and I was not practicing law.
Any other questions from us here before I ask? So Bennett, while you were talking, do you want to continue
Sure.
any trepidations you have?
With regard to stormwater management, obviously you have the pipes that are going basically under the new parking spaces. Can those be made into perforated pipes to allow some infiltration into the ground to basically hold stormwater on site instead of discharging it into the storm sewer?
We can, but we had done soil testing out there, and what we found in the soil profile was 6 inches of topsoil, 4.5 feet of clay, and iron plating that we could not get through with a hand auger. That's why we went with the solid pipe rather than the perforated pipe. So we can put a perforated pipe in a stone field, but that water would probably just sit there, not percolate down into the ground.
Understood.
So for purposes, should this get approved, Ben, and I know Nicole will call me and Nicole will call you, as to Ben's letter said this, what was decided at the hearing, what's the preference of the board engineer with that regard?
In that situation, I would then say that if it's not feasible to get infiltration, then I'd be okay with the plan as proposed.
Okay, great.
And we can address the rest of the comments.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Do you have other things, Bennett, that you wanted to kind of bring up?
They already talked about the lighting, and I think that's pretty much it. With regards to the right turn out, right turn only onto Logan Road, it's not a bad idea. I think it's feasible. I think probably we would need some traffic testimony to see whether or not that is the best option. Right now, we just don't know, but I think we may get that depending on if,
Well,
if
no,
the
I-
applicant wants to bring traffic into here.
No, so again, the proposal now is to have a two-way driveway. I would need to confirm with my client if she'd be agreeable to a condition that it's right turn only tonight, and then if she's not, then we would bring the traffic engineer. So again, it would be following the suggestion of the board.
Yep, let me ask you a question. So Bennett, when you said it's not a bad idea, does that mean could be a good idea?
Yeah, well, it by limiting the traffic there, you're sending everybody south on Logan Road. Now, where they go from there, who knows? They could
Right.
turn onto Appleby and go that way to get to Sunset, or they could go all the way back to 35. And if somebody wants to get onto Sunset, there is the entrance onto Sunset, although that is where there's kind of some conflict now because you're crossing two lanes if you want to turn left onto Sunset.
Mm-hmm. But that hasn't changed. That's how it is today.
Right, that's how it is today.
Right. So let me ask you another question. So did you have another idea in mind?
I mean, no, those are the
Okay.
those are the options.
And I just have a question for Ben.
sure.
Ben, based on the ITE and the types of traffic that an office would generate in peak hours, as an I know you're not a you don't testify as a traffic engineer, but as a licensed engineer, do you have concerns that by allowing the left turn onto Logan, it would create a backup at that light at Sunset?
I think what Mr. Duffy said is something that could happen if somebody's trying to make a left turn and stops in the middle of the road. Traffic could back up towards the traffic light, but there, without seeing counts or anything, it seems like that you can make that left turn. Logan Road is not like a primary road. It doesn't have as much traffic as Sunset Avenue, so it's viable to have a left turn there, but per the board's request.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay.
And just one follow-up question.
Yep.
Understanding that there are members of the public who live on Logan Road and don't want the entrance there, recognizing that, and I'm not diminishing their concern, but from a practical planning perspective, township-wide, from an engineering perspective, isn't it better to look at the overall scheme, and wouldn't it be better to put the traffic on the lesser road, the road that's less busy with less conflict, than keeping it on a road that we know there's conflict?
Ben, if you need to see traffic counts, which is what you said earlier, you don't
Yeah,
answer the question now.
I don't know the answer to that exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It
Good.
wasn't a trick question.
No, I know, but I just don't want to put him.
Yeah, I don't want to box him in either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you want to be boxed in. You want to be.
Not particularly.
Jim, do you have anything that you want to add?
I think really you're gonna have a planner testify to the variances, so we can wait for that, but one other comment on the right-hand
Yep.
turn, left-hand turn onto Logan. Quite frankly, knowing how people are, and if you just put signage there saying no left turn, people are gonna make a left turn.
Yeah.
And so the driveway would have to be redesigned
Oh, of course.
with a right turn in and a right turn out and
Mhm.
discourage a left turn.
Yes. Right. Yep. Yep.
So Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant needs to know how the board's leaning here. Before you go and put on a planner who's going to testify to an application that may completely change from what's being proposed here tonight, I think it would be it would be good for the applicant to know which way the board's leading on this, because if they need to redesign this plan, we don't really need to hear the planner tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a sense where the board's headed on this one.
I do too.
What I would ask.
I think I would like to hear from the community a little bit
that was
first.
going to be my suggestion.
If that's okay with you, Mark, I would. Thank you.
And I would ask Mr. Chair that perhaps if there's a chance that we're going to carry this, that the board would entertain allowing them to make comments and not just questions, so we could get
Yes,
as much
yeah,
feedback
feeling.
as possible.
Totally, I'm
before
totally with you.
Making any revisions.
Yep.
Thank you.
So anybody have any more questions for Jim or Bennett? No? Okay, so now we're going to open up this, and you don't have anybody else, right, Ms. Kumko? So now we're going to open this to the public. Would anybody from the public like to make a comment? Why don't you come up?
Or ask a question.
Or ask a question, yeah, one at a time. Bring the whole family. Bring her up.
is I'm going to swear you in, and you only can talk one at a time, though, for the record, okay?
She usually does all the talking.
So, ma'am, I'm going to swear you in. Do you swear any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And just state your name for the record.
It's Nancy Weary, Wheeary.
And what's your address, Miss Weary?
1318 Logan Road.
Thank you. And sir, you might as well just give us your name.
I'm Gary Weary, Wheary.
Same address.
I'm the husband, yes, and I live at 1318 Logan Road.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Weary.
Okay.
Okay, my first thing when I saw these plans, and you mentioned it, the attorney, that why now, with nobody ever parks there on that side of the building, so now why all of a sudden are we like adding the parking spaces when nobody was parking there anyway? Am I correct for the people who live around? You never see anybody parked on that side.
So, it
You,
just,
you can,
yeah, so, again, to answer your question, why now? Because my client owns the building now.
Right.
And,
It's a new owner?
well, again, she came to me indicating that there isn't, that maybe under the current tenancy, there isn't enough parking, but when we looked at what the ordinance requires here, I don't know that you necessarily need a reason to bring a property into greater conformity. So again, office space is vacant everywhere. We're trying to make this location as attractive as possible to tenants so it stays full and continues to be a contributing member of the Ocean Township business community. So we're just trying to make it more conforming to parking, to meet
Yeah.
the needs of the tenants.
yeah, probably the why question. I mean, I think they have the right to do it and they're conforming to it,
It's
so.
just,
Yeah, I think we should,
1978.
I think we should probably stick with the questions that relate to,
Okay. Well, and the other thing again, there's always traffic on Logan Road. But another thought is the existing traffic light that's there. So when you come out, and you want to make a left, maybe to go back up that way, maybe make an arrow on that traffic light, and that may alleviate some of the congestion.
Can you
at
point
that
to what
corner.
you're talking about, Mrs. Weary?
Sure.
Because I don't understand.
There's a traffic light right at.
Oh, I know it.
Sunset.
Use the microphone.
No, you can bring it with you.
I think she means a left turn arrow only.
A left turn arrow. When you come out, see, I'm also, again, these driveways are gonna be pretty much in front of our properties. We cannot get out of our driveway now with traffic coming either way. And they also, at the other end of Logan, there's that new funeral home that has, again, exit down Logan Road. I mean, I just feel like we're becoming the new Deal Road, West Park Avenue. That Sunset is gonna take you forever and Logan to get down. So anyway, the traffic light,
Which house are you, Mrs. Weary?
on 1318.
No, if you could just point on there.
Oh,
Second
Okay.
one in, third one in, fourth one in from Sunset.
there's a corner house
Yep.
where the first house
We're
is.
the first house.
The
With
brown.
So you're the brown roof right there.
the brown roof.
Yeah.
Yes, that's us.
That's us.
Okay. Okay, right here, okay, Sunset Avenue, there's a light.
Yep.
If you come out here, you can you can get in the left lane, but there's no arrow, so nobody's waiting.
I see
Right?
it.
There's not an arrow.
There's an arrow right there on the street.
No, she means.
She means on the light, a left
Oh, you
turn.
mean a
That-
yellow?
Yeah.
And if there was an arrow, so that the other people would have to wait.
We don't, I wish that I had control over that. That's not something I can do anything
You know,
about.
That's not another way to go. And again, I don't understand, why. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but
Our main concern is
what about the residents?
there is a lot of traffic on Logan Road. The fact that it's not as busy as Sunset, has anybody ever been down there at 5 o'clock? People come off 35.
It's pretty heavy. We have a hard time getting out of the house now. I don't understand why they need to justify all these extra seats. It doesn't seem like anybody uses the building. And who are these people that are being inconvenienced by not going into this thing? If they can't come down 35,
It's not
Just-
that busy over there,
I don't
drove by
see-
today, well, we look at it all the time. There's not that much traffic now. There's-
So, I'm just, Mr. and Mrs. Weary, I'm just gonna tell you, the board really doesn't have control
Yeah.
over them adding more spaces.
Right.
Because the ordinance,
There.
It's not that. It's the fact that the ordinance requires more spaces than they have, and if they can get them on the lot, they're entitled to it.
Okay.
The real question is whether the board's going to allow them to exit onto Logan Road, which they don't necessarily have to do based upon site plan principles.
I mean, that street is very narrow, Logan Road. I mean, people park on the street.
They're now parking on.
They're parking on the street, and to tell you the truth, my car was out there one night, and my car got hit by a UPS driver. Amazon driver, just parking on the side of that road. It's a very narrow road. It doesn't take
People
much
are
traffic.
parking there further down.
And again, I understand it's the summer, so like I said, when an event in Asbury Park ends and they go up Sunset, that's congested right there. And then you have people coming down Logan, and until you put that light up there, I don't know, they have any countless accidents we saw.
There's still lights.
Before that light was even there. There's a lot of traffic there. We just don't see the point.
Okay.
It's a bad corner, and again, we live on Logan Road, so yeah, we do have a personal interest, but we're not the only ones. We have a whole thing there. We're not just doing it for us, the community. It's getting too crowded down here, and I don't think we need it.
Okay, I think we got your comments on this.
Why are they parking on Logan Road?
Well,
I think that
well,
they're renting those homes.
they're
and there's
renting,
so many people.
yes, they're renting the homes out. I mean,
Nobody's looking at it.
So we only can have one of you talk at a time, and try to be in the.
I think
Really, more specifically, are they parking on Logan Road to use this facility?
they're parking.
no.
No, they're just parking on Logan Road
To get into their houses.
because
People who live on there.
yeah, there's only if they have a driveway, there's only too many. There's only one or two cars that can fit in the driveway.
And I think the
And
houses
some of these houses, I know that there's more than
they're way past.
Okay.
way past the occupancy level. I mean, but that's not my concern. That's not my business. But there are the people on that
The
that
people are now parking on the street. I mean, it's a mess.
Okay, thanks for your comments on that. Much appreciated.
So, Chairman, before you call the next person, just to get the the parking number straight, because I know there was some statements made earlier. According to the 1978 resolution, they came in and proposed 64 parking spaces where 77 was required, if this resolution's accurate. And then they came back in 1992, and at that point, they apparently had 65, they were proposing 65 parking spaces, and suddenly the parking count had bumped up to 154 parking spaces.
That's because initially it was general office, and then in '92 they were requesting medical office.
Okay,
which is
so
a higher
that changed the
parking
count.
That changed the count.
All right, so that's just
Now
to
medical and general is the same count, though, no? Oh, it's still different?
same.
Okay.
It's still different.
And so today, all apparently that's required is 115, and they have 89 spaces. I don't know how they got to 89 spaces from the 65 spaces in 1992.
No.
but-
We have 65. We're proposing 89.
I'm sorry, you have 65 now. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, I miswrote. Okay. So they have 65 now. So that just gives you the proper
Yes,
history.
got it. Yes.
So then I stand corrected, Mr. Adis. It was the second time around that they came in that the variance was granted.
Correct.
So to stay with the theme of public comment, does anybody else have a comment they'd like to make? Come on up, sir. You could just state your name for us.
Name is Victor Calvo.
And sir, let me swear you in. Do you swear your testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name again for the record.
Victor Calvo, C-A-L-V-O.
Okay, and your address?
1317 Turner Avenue.
Turner Avenue? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Wanamassa was one of the first communities in Ocean Township. And at the time Wanamassa was approved, you had Appleby, which was the main corridor for that particular subdivision, and you had the cross streets, which we're all aware of. Unfortunately, at the time, families did not have 2 and 3 cars. They had one vehicle if they were lucky. On my street alone, if you drive by, which is Turner Avenue, 1 block east of Logan, if you drive down Turner at 11 o'clock in the morning, there's no cars on the road. If you come back on any of the cross streets between Sunset and Appleby, anytime after 5 o'clock, both sides of the streets, on every one of the streets, are bumper-to-bumper cars. Because families now have 2 vehicles, minimum. Logan, frankly, is a hell of a place to try to drive down at night, 5 o'clock. or in the evening, because the people that are living on Logan only have a short driveway. That's the way the houses were built. All right? You have to park on the street. Now, I understand the logic of the owner of the property. I've been on both sides of these particular hearings in the past. And I don't feel that any owner should be deprived of the rights that they have based on the existing zoning. And I think that there needs to be a common ground without having to spend a fortune again with traffic studies or with anything else, because I think logically a traffic study is going to show you don't want to make a left-hand turn coming out of Logan. And I think a traffic study is going to show that there's a heck of a lot more traffic on Logan than you anticipate. All right? I am one of the many people that head north on Route 35 and pull off on Route 35 and take Logan to get to Appleby and to get to my street. All right? There's a lot more traffic. It's not a main artery like 35, but once again, coming in off of Route 35 onto Logan, head northbound, you have traffic there. All right. I'm just trying to give that part, that insight to the people.
Do you want to? Can you? Is there a question or a comment that you want to make?
Everything I've been giving is a comment to try to help clarify the situation, because everyone has been concentrating on Logan, Logan, Logan. The problem is not only Logan. The problem is also the cross streets. All right. You need the parking spaces on Logan. I do not live on Logan. All right. But the people on Logan need the parking spaces that are there. That's my comment.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else have any comments from the public? Hi.
Do you swear a testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And just state your name for the record.
Nisa Zonaire, Zaunere. I live on Appleby Drive.
What was your first name?
Nisa, Nissa.
And I'm sorry, your address again?
2605 Appleby.
605 Appleby. Thank you.
Yeah, so just maybe a comment or two is definitely on Logan Road, it's a very narrow street, especially when people have their garbage cans out. You have to be courteous and actually allow cars to kind of, you can't share the road. So people are crossing into the middle of the road to get down Logan Road at any given point in time. The second thing is on Appleby, that is also a cross street, high rates of speed throughout our town. We already know that. We've already complained about speed throughout the town. But specifically people coming off of 35 onto Logan are often speeding. And then because it is a narrow road, they're taking up the middle of the actual road. So any additional traffic going that way, you have to be courteous and allow people to continue. I guess the other question is, if you're going to just propose a right turn only, what's the difference of having a right turn from the first street onto Sunset and then making the right versus a second entrance with a right turn only? There's really no value added. And if you look at Aspen Dental or something like that as an example, it's a right turn only and it says don't block the intersection so that people have the courtesy of getting out. So I don't see the benefit of adding a second driveway that's a right turn only if they can already exit from the parking lot onto Sunset to make the right and go. It's really just a courtesy if they're trying to make that left turn. But if you're going to try to force people to have to go up to the highway and make the loop around, then what's the benefit of adding a second driveway for that?
I can address
Sure,
that.
go ahead.
So if you make the right turn out on Sunset, first of all, you're going into traffic and potentially the queue that's already backing up to head eastbound on Sunset. So you have to wait for a gap.
Right.
And then when you get into there, then you're behind the light. So in order to keep the free flow of traffic and not create more of a backup on Sunset, by making the right turn out on Logan, it allows it to just loop right out without creating any traffic impact to Logan Road or adding to what's on Sunset. So it's actually alleviating Sunset and keeping a nice free flow out on Logan. And it doesn't sound like the right turn out will have any real impact on any of the traffic concerns that have been expressed from the public so far.
I mean, I guess, but again, and I know it's the building owner's right to have the right complying parking spaces, but it's not like there's hundreds of cars leaving that parking lot at any given time. I mean, we're talking one or two at most. It's not a very frequently, it's so understand if we, you know, again, like with the Aspen Dental, there's a sign that says don't block this, so that it allows 1 or 2 cars to exit the parking lot, rather than having a second.
Right, and I
set of-
think that was our point about us wanting to bring a traffic engineers to demonstrate that we wouldn't be creating any real issue. But again, we agree with you that there won't be a lot of traffic coming out of our site.
Yeah, I guess I just don't understand the benefit, because it is very challenging. Like I said, you have to share that road that entire time you're going up Logan, as people are coming Logan to Sunset off the highway, high rates of speed, and it's so narrow that they're coming down the middle of that road. So anytime there's garbage cans out or a car parked on the opposite side, you have to sort of, you know, jockey through traffic to allow cars to come through. And so it just seems to spill more car traffic out onto that side of the road without really added value, is just adding more danger to the area. But very backed up always on Logan, trying to make a left, trying to get out of any of those driveways. I mean, frankly, that's my cousin, so I visit her frequently, and I can never get out of her driveway to back out onto that road, because cars are constantly stopped there. So it just doesn't seem like value added to add another entrance and spill more traffic out onto there without addressing the core issue, which is the narrowness of that street to begin with, and how much traffic is already being forced onto that off of 35.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask is it Logan a city road, county road,
Town.
road? Okay.
And it's a collector in the master plan,
Okay.
as opposed to a major or an arterial.
And if we were, I mean, and again, just to address, and I apologize if I mispronounce it, Ms. Nerisse, did I say that right? Yes. Oh, Nisa Zonair, I missed the Zonair. So, just to address what she had indicated, the same traffic will be on Logan, whether we put the right out or not, meaning if they go out on Sunset, make the right, then they're gonna make the right onto Logan. So it's not, we're not adding more traffic onto Logan. It's just a matter of relieving some of it on Sunset.
Sunset, yeah.
Those same cars are going in that direction are gonna go in that
Yep,
direction
yeah,
regardless.
understood, yep. Hi,
Let me
thanks.
swear you in. Do you swear your testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Robin Lewis. I live at 2206 Sunset Avenue.
Okay. Robin spelled how?
ROBINLEWIS.
Thank you. And your address?
2206 Sunset Avenue.
220?
Sunset.
660.
2206 Sunset.
Oh, 2206 Sunset Ave. Go ahead. I copies.
I propose a sensor on the exit out of 3200 Sunset, so that when a car has its weight on it, it turns Sunset eastbound green for 3 to 4 minutes, so the traffic will be headed that way and won't go on to
So we
Logan.
don't have control over that.
Can't do that.
It's
I
a
would
great
love to be
idea.
able to- it's a
Yeah,
great
that's
idea. I'd love to be able
fantastic.
to do that. I can't.
I mean, that's not really a high-risk intersection. Our high-risk intersections, in my opinion, as a local EMT, are Sunset 35, Deal Road 35, but if we could open it up so the lights change,
I don't,
that would
I
be
don't have
something
the
that
ability to
planning
do
would.
that.
Planning, lights,
We don't, it's not our authority.
It's not our authority at all.
We have, we have no authority over
I
that.
guess it would be the
County.
It would be, no, it's not a county road.
No, Sunset
Sunset.
Avenue and Logan Road are both township roads.
Right, so it would be the-
change to the traffic signal would be something done by the township. So that would be something that would have to be initiated by either the township council or the township engineer.
Or the township police department.
Or the police
but-
department,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, if I stop on Corley's and Monmouth Road on my way to Allenhurst train station at 5 a.m., which I have, it changes it so that I can go through to the train. So it knows if you're there, and it could direct traffic down Sunset in the eastward direction. If you had an inbound headed from south to north on Logan direction, and an outbound on north to south to north on to Sunset with a green light, that would direct traffic.
Okay, thank you.
But as far as risk for that intersection, fender benders maybe, I wouldn't say it's a really high risk intersection for traffic and incidents. Would you?
No, nobody's offered that testimony.
I would say you could look up the police records for traffic incidents. There's really not a lot at this time at the
Okay.
intersection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question they'd like to ask? Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment section for now.
2 minutes, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sure,
Speak
go
with my
ahead.
client?
Yep. Well, first,
Because we can't discuss right now. while they're not here.
I'll tell you what happens when they come back.
It's more of a nerd question.
No questions or dumb questions.
No, it's a nerd question.
Professional that we could call or not?
Since we're still on the record, just very quickly, I look at the master plan.
Yeah, let's all just take a TV timeout, okay? A TV timeout.
Yeah, definitely.
There's another case after this time.
Yeah.
One of them have to, so they're both not.
Right. Ending up.
I can't believe Dave's no longer low person on the totem pole over there.
Dave Fisher.
Uh-huh. Tell him congratulations next time you see him.
Yeah, I think he misses you guys a little.
No, he doesn't. You're my, what, 4th or 5th council member that's been on board?
Really?
So, yeah, because the low man always gets this one.
I don't mind it.
It's like the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on zoning before. Those meetings are
Yeah.
super long.
Yeah.
These were nice and short.
So I mailed a letter to New York City on Friday. I've been tracking it, Jeff. It went from here to Asbury to Trenton to New York City, and then it went to Lehigh Valley, and then it went to Philadelphia, and it is currently in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm asking him if it's in the plan.
Not sure it's ever gonna get
Dollar
to
bricks?
to go. I want to ask Paul to redo the bricks.
Redo
'cause
the
I
bricks?
I can't stare at that for years.
I'm gonna give him one more minute.
So up,
Oh, really?
up above
Right
the
up
hill
there.
on Church. So, I'm gonna be. That's gonna be the bane of my
Thank you.
existence. But to stare at it with 2 colored tone bricks is gonna drive me
I
nuts.
have to
My
notice it
OCD
every
is like you can't handle it. But I don't know really
Where they,
where they got
why
that
it
from.
was like,
Oh, the third, seventh,
Is that
first, and
design?
third.
I mean, I guess it used to. But
It did, right?
Jim was gonna.
Yeah.
Like, wow, almost like my
Yeah.
running in last.
It switched last meeting before this one.
When did it change?
Last meeting.
month.
Last meeting.
Oh, okay, so I wasn't like crazy today, being like, how
I
am I
mean, you
running
might have
late?
been just not about
Well,
this.
you were crazy.
Is it
Yes.
switched permanently?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
wasn't here last meeting, so.
Okay, thanks for coming back. Cheers.
Wait till we go back on the record.
Were you afraid we were gonna run out?
Who knew? Who knew? I was just about to stand up and get you.
No, I appreciate it. It was a lot.
1 second. Are we back on the record?
Yeah.
We're back. We'll just notice for the record that everybody who was here prior to us going off are still here.
Okay, so couple things. First, it was a lot to digest, and not having had a chance to speak to my client, I had to go over everything, so I apologize for the delay. We would seek an adjournment. We're going to consult with a traffic engineer, and find out from a traffic engineer who is going to be an expert on this as to what the best alternative is for this site. Based on the fact that we know that there's a problem on Sunset, and we're hearing anecdotally that there may be a problem on Logan, we'd like to have a traffic engineer go out there and actually do the counts and make some recommendations, because as Ben said, it's not a bad idea, but we don't know if it's really a good idea from an expert traffic perspective. So again, we'd ask for an adjournment to allow the ability to have a traffic expert look at this, present a report to you, and offer some testimony.
Great. I appreciate you guys talking about it and taking the time out Is everybody in the group cool with this?
Yeah, I just have a comment. So, this is my neighborhood, so I'm on Fairmount, Sunset, Logan, 35, Wickapeco every day, a couple times a day, and I see what everybody's talking about. So when you do that with the traffic engineer, I'm very curious if the right turn only makes a difference, or if left right doesn't make a difference. Kind of what you just said.
I will.
Right. That's kind of what I'm.
And
very
again,
interested.
so, and having spoken to my client, the real issue here for this site is people, once they're on the site, they can't get out if they want to make a left turn.
Right.
And there's been running over things on site to get around and to do, so we're looking to make the site function safely, which is what is the job of the planning board, as well as the surrounding neighborhood. So we're gonna look at all of that, Mr. Beal.
Great, totally appreciate it. So I think what we can do is just have us carry this.
We need a date.
What's
Yep.
the next available date? And practically speaking, we might not be able to make it if we need to get a traffic expert. October what, I'm sorry?
So September's not possible.
No, but October's good. That would give us the time to do that.
Okay.
So. Oh, wait. I was like, good, I'm
If they
available.
want to do that.
23rd is fine for me. Wait, October 23rd is a
No,
Wednesday.
September 23rd.
September 25th.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think we might have a problem getting all of that together by September 23rd. Let me just take a quick look at my availability and everybody else's. Are you available on the 21st? Maybe you're not. Okay. October 28th, okay? Okay. October 28th, we would request without the need for further notice.
Great, granted.
Thank you so much.
So everyone here in the audience, if you want to be heard in this application, you need to be back on October 28th at 7 p.m. You're not going to receive any further notice, so you just need to know to be here. October 28th in this room, you will not receive any further notice.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Krimko.
Well, I'll be back.
Okay, thanks.
That's not a threat.
Okay, we have our next case. If everybody kind of clears out here.
Why'd they change it? The time.
It's actually a lot more fun when there's people in the audience.
Maybe go home.
Okay.
See your kids.
Okay, so we have our next case is BC Brielle LLC, Brielle Avenue, Ocean 07712, Block 183, Lot 7, Zone 1-1. The applicant proposes to construct a 32,400 square feet building to operate as a luxury asset self-storage facility. The site previously was approved for a 15,307 square foot building with 11,307 square feet of warehouse space.
Luda, you want to just step outside for
Two-
that?
2,000 square feet of retail space and 2,000 square feet of office space in a mezzanine. The proposed use of the self-storage is permitted use in the zone. The existing site meets all the bulk requirements specific to the 1 zone. A number of bulk variances are necessary. Okay.
All right, and I will mark the following exhibits into evidence.
Mark, just give me 1 second. Just flip the page to catch up.
Faster.
I'm trying. I'm dancing. All right, I'm ready.
Exhibit A1 will be the application. Exhibit A2 will be the boundary and topographic survey. Exhibit A3 will be the preliminary and final major site plan. Exhibit A4 will be the architectural plans. Exhibit A5 will be the stormwater management report. Exhibit A6 will be the operation and maintenance manual stormwater management facility. Those are all the exhibits I have from the applicant. I then have the following exhibits from the board. Exhibit B1 will be the board planner report. Exhibit B2 will be the board engineer report. Exhibit B3 will be the crime prevention report. Exhibit B4 will be the traffic safety bureau report. Exhibit B5 will be the code enforcement report. Exhibit B6 will be the environmental commission report, and Exhibit B7 will be the fire marshal's report, and Exhibit B8 will be the Department of Public Works report.
Okay. You want to give us a little overview on what's going on here?
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein, members of the board. Jennifer Krimko on behalf of this applicant. As the board may remember, and as was said at the beginning, this was originally approved for an industrial warehouse use on the site, which involved, as you know, a lot of heavy trucks and everything else. This is a somewhat unique use as you hear it, and it's unique in that it is self-storage, which is permitted, But unlike self-storage that you're typically aware of, it's not a lot of tiny units with 100 or 200 people that would come there. We're proposing 16 luxury self-storage units. And what that means is there's many people who might have art collections or wine collections or have classic cars, and they might not have the room at their home to store it or to view it. So this is their ability to have a very secure, very private place in order to address that. Unlike a typical self-storage that you're going to see through the architecturals, this building is actually beautiful. Quite a bit of care was gone into the architecture to it to make it welcoming and to make it rise to the level of the clientele that we hope to attract here. There are some variances as it relates to wall heights, and we have an exhibit that I think outlines it pretty clearly for you. I can tell you that it's very similar to the relief that was granted under the previous application because this is a property with severe topography. The good news on this application over the old application is we're removing less trees than we were, and we're adding more, meaning the deficit for which we're making payment into the tree fund has been reduced. So we are improving that. Tonight I have with me the engineer, I have the architect, and I have the client who can answer any operational questions. And then also I have a professional planner to wrap all of that up.
Are you abandoning the old approval?
In the event this application is approved,
Understood.
then yes.
Okay.
Then yes. Well, let me rephrase it. In the event this application is constructed, then yes. I mean, obviously, once this is perfected, the other one goes out the door. But it's my understanding you can have two until one
You
is
can.
taken action.
That's why I asked the question.
No, I appreciate that. So a few more exhibits, and the planner will have some additional ones. I'm just gonna mark them quickly, and then I'll hand the packets out. 3, 4, 5, 6. A7 is an aerial of the site. Let's do one at a time. A8 is a color rendered site plan. And then A9 is an exhibit that was prepared in response to Jim's letter, just to help the board understand where these walls are and whether or not the impact is going to be from inside the site or out. As you're going to see, some of the variances we need are as if we were standing at the bottom of our basin looking out.
So what would you call A9?
A9 is the color rendered site plan, and it's marked wall fence heights exhibit.
And A8 was also the color render site.
Correct, but this one is an annotated version of that.
Annotated version.
Fancy word.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Because I'm of an age where all of a sudden I'm getting warm. You don't mind not yet, we'll wait. Yeah, you know what, just because it is such a pretty picture, the architect makes a good suggestion. I would like to just hand out So A10 is a color rendered elevation of the front elevation, and the architect was kind enough to include copies of his plan in reduced form in this packet, but those have already been moved in. So with that as the opening, I'd call Eric Ballou. I know his partners have testified here many times. I don't know how recently he has, so we'll take a moment, have him sworn, and put his licensure on the record.
Sir, do you swear any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
Just state your name for the record.
Eric Bullitt.
Spell your last name.
B-A-L-L-O-U.
Okay. And is Eric E-R-I-C?
E-R-I-C.
Thank you. And you're a licensed engineer?
I am, in good standing.
Thank you very much. That's all we need.
Okay.
All right, great.
So Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you and the exhibits that we moved in, and you can walk the board through what's existing there, what we're proposing, what relief we need, as well as, you know, to highlight some of the comparisons, particularly where we're doing better over what was previously granted.
Sounds great. So I'm gonna start out with exhibit A7.
And you just need to speak into the microphone. I'll get you before they do.
So we're gonna start out with exhibit A7, which is the existing conditions with a July 2024 aerial image. So we have the site that's outlined in yellow, and as you can see, it's really one of the last lots. It is the last lot on this block to actually be developed. The project does have frontage on Brielle Avenue, and then it's surrounded with other industrial commercial properties on the remaining sides. It's approximately about 1.38 acres. As you can see right now, it's currently vacant. It is in the I-1 industrial zone. As you heard before, this was subject to a previous approval for the property. One of the uniqueness of this property is the elevational change, and that's going to come up a lot through the testimony because it really guided a lot of the needed engineering design to make this an operational and effective facility. Along Brielle Avenue, from the south to the north, you have an elevation change that goes from 121.3 all the way down to 106.9. So there's 14.4 feet of drop along Brielle Avenue. Then you go to the rear property line, and along from south to north in that area, you do drop from about 110.1 to 93.3, so about 17 feet of change. When you look at the composite, like the overall grade change, this site actually has approximately 28 feet of grade change, which is substantial and very unique for this property. So I want to give you a basis of that from the existing conditions, and then the proposed conditions will show how we address such a grade change.
And this is A8, yes?
Correct. So A8 consists of that same July 2024 aerial that you see with the standard site plan superimposed. So you can see the surrounding area as well as what we're proposing for the development. What we're seeking for is preliminary and final major site plan to construct 32,400 square feet of gross floor area to operate as a luxury asset self-storage facility with parking and associated site improvements. How we started out is we actually located the building along the southern lot line, southern setback, as well as the front setback. And then we have the parking towards the north of that as well for the facility, which we can get into more detail. Along the southern edge, we are going for a setback relief for the rear setback. 60 feet is required where we're proposing 45 feet. But one of the great benefits we have with this design, it's actually allowing us to preserve about a 30-foot existing tree buffer between us and the disturbed area probably prior to our building. So we're going to keep that existing trees to buffer the project.
And when you speak about buffer, there is no buffer requirement because it's industrial against industrial. And behind us is really just the sides of those buildings, which is either just parking or access ways around those buildings, and those are also in the I-1 zone, correct?
Correct. These are existing industrial buildings, and you can see there's parking right along the rear common property line that we have. And then what we're proposing is for access, we're proposing a 24-foot drive aisle that'll lead you to a 19-space parking lot with ADA spaces as well as an EV space. That's going to allow you to have access to the doors, both pedestrian and vehicle, to have access into the building. Your zoning requirements require one parking space for every 50 storage units. Here we have 16 storage units, so we're required one space, so we're exceeding that by providing 19 spaces, which is greater than one per unit that we have. With the parking spaces that we're proposing, we are proposing to utilize 9 by 18 stalls versus 10 by 18, which is required by your ordinance. So we are requesting a variance to allow a smaller stall by 1 foot. And that's really to be based upon the low turnover of this kind of use. And by decreasing that stall space, it does allow us to decrease the impervious coverage for the site as well.
I'm sorry, that's a requirement for a luxury asset or for?
No. For the parking requirement for self-storage is one space per 50 units. Your parking stall width generally across the board in the township is 10 foot wide. This, as this board knows, typically a variance would be granted as long as it's not a shopping center with shopping carts and a high turnover location.
Based upon this type of use in regards to loading, typically would be done with vans or potentially a box truck. So we haven't designated a separate independent loading area for this facility based upon the number of units of only being 16. So we are requesting a variance not to have a designated loading area.
Well, Eric, one thing, and again, just if the board could just consider this, and I know I'm sure you've looked at the architectural plans, when the architect testifies, he'll explain to you that these units are accessed interiorly through overhead doors, but you could actually pull your cars into it and pull into the unit itself. So, again, it's hard to explain that to you without the architect testifying, but we're expecting that loading will be in these smaller vehicles so we can actually pull in the aisle, pull into the unit and unload these types of things. Or if a car is being stored here, it would just be driven right in and pulled in. Correct.
Just go back for 1 second. 18 parking spaces are required?
One parking space is required. We're providing 19.
You only need one parking space for the entire site?
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's self-storage.
Okay.
Right. One aspect that we did add that's actually not on the site plans that you presently have is that we added a 10 by 10 masonry 6 foot high enclosure for solid waste and recycling storage. It was a comment that was brought up within the engineering review letter, the location for solid waste and recycling storage. So we're adding an area at the back of the parking lot to accommodate our solid waste and recycling needs.
And that would be a private hauler, correct?
This would all be done by private hauler.
Okay.
Correct. Along the frontage, we are proposing a 4 foot sidewalk, a public sidewalk within the public right of way along our frontage to meet the ordinance requirements. In regards to fencing and signage, along our parking lot area, we actually have screen walls on both sides of the parking, as well as a sliding gate that goes across the opening. And then there's a cart access that allows that gate to be opened. So that'll screen the parking lot area from Brielle Avenue, which is a nice feature.
And Eric, that would be accessible for emergency services, so we would be in touch with the fire, police, and the EMTs and put some sort of access in that for them as well, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
As far as signage, really the only signage we actually have is that we're providing a 4-digit address number on that screen wall. So the letters will be approximately, the numbers will be approximately 18 inches in height, 6 foot of length, and it'll be mounted on that 6 foot high screen wall. So it works as a screen wall as well as placement for the address. There's no other naming being proposed, just to identify the street address number for clarity. And that is actually conforming with the ordinance. So there's no relief being requested for signage. Lighting. So we do have the parking lot area, as well as we have some lawn areas associated with the use of the facility. So we are using downward facing LED lights, the slender ones on the pole mounted, color 4000. They're mounted either at 15 to 23, which is well below the 28 feet that's allowed for this area. We did comply with 9 out of the 10 lighting requirements, but we are requesting a variance for a slight deviation with the maximum maintained average foot candles. 3.5 is what's permitted. We're over it slightly at 3.7. And again, the way we've designed the site so it's appropriately lit, and there's no off-site spillage or things of that nature. So it's just a little bit of a change with the average to mid ratio that we're requesting some relief on. Besides that, we're fully compliant with your lighting requirements. Landscaping. The first thing is preserving trees. That's the best part to do about landscape is preserve the trees. So we've done that. And then you can see along Brielle Avenue, we've really done a heavy planting, of buffer plantings with deciduous trees, evergreen trees, shrubs, to really try to buffer the facility, create sort of a private feel to the facility, as well as buffer the appearance from the outside. Even the bioretention basin, that also has plants in it as well, in accordance with the DEP guidelines. tree removal. So the tree replacement plan that we provided shows that we're removing approximately 133 trees, which is proposing equivalent planting of 65, which leaves a deficit of 68 trees that would be addressed through the shade tree contribution. Comparing it to the previous one, we're actually doing a lot better. The previous one required removal of 165 trees. So we were able to save 32 trees through this redesign. Whereas the tree fund, we had a deficit of 123 trees. So again, we reduced that by 58 with our new design. So this is definitely much better from a tree removal and replacement standpoint. We've definitely made great strides on enhancing that. With that said, though identified in the planner's letter, there is still some relief that was similar to what we did last time. A minimum landscaped area along property lines. The ordinance requires a minimum of 10-foot deep landscaping along the side and rear property lines. We far exceed it along the rear. Greater like 30 foot is 10. On the northern side, we're at 7 feet, where 10 foot is required per the ordinance. The 7 foot distance is the same distance that was previously approved. When you look at sort of the average of it, it would average greater than 10 feet for the side and the rear. And then on the opposite side, on the southern side rear area, we greatly exceed the 10 foot of plantings in that area. So it's in this one area along the north that we're 3 feet below the requirement. Landscaping along public streets. So when we did this plan, we really tried to add a lot of landscape plantings right along the frontage and tried to enhance that as much as possible. Your ordinance envisions 10 foot of sod or grass between the property line before any planting and shrubs that occur. So here we're less than 10 feet. We have mostly plantings and things of that nature. What we proposed there, we would look at possibly pulling back some of the shrubs. The idea is, through the planner's letter, is to provide more area for snow storage. So that's why they want to have a buffer a little bit beyond the sidewalks. So I do believe we could pull back some of the shrubs, still maintain that dense plantings, and still provide a little bit more room for snow storage in the future. As well as if there was damage to the shrubs and things of that nature, the owner would take care of the shrubs and replace and take care of them as needed.
And Eric, just to understand, so we're still asking for the variance.
We are.
But we're willing to work with Jim to manipulate that in order to create sufficient snow storage to meet the intent of the ordinance.
Okay, yeah.
That's my intention. One of the other items listed was a landscape plan prepared by a landscape architect. This was prepared by a professional engineer. As noted in the planner's letter, we would work with your planner to make sure all the species are acceptable, as well as address the comments within the Environmental Commission's review letter. They had species and spacing comments, so we would like to work those out through with your planner as well to address their comments. Things that were listed as relief that we're going to agree to not have to request. One of the requests was waivers that was listed in the letter was sod. It says lawn areas shall have sod. We are going to agree to do sod, which would eliminate the relief in that letter. The other one is regards to the branching of trees. Right now, I think we show it branched at 7 feet, but the township requirement is a minimum of 8 feet to a maximum of 12 feet. So there's different tree branching requirements. Obviously, we will comply with the township's requirements, so we're going to eliminate that relief that's being requested in that review letter. Best for last, proposed grading. So again, earlier we talked about the 28 foot of grade change. And then when you look at these types of buildings, commercial, industrial, things of that, non-residential buildings, they really always have a flat floor plate. So you have to have that at one elevation, whereas we have a site that has 28 feet of grade change. So what we did to accommodate that is we set the building so the southern side is actually acting as a retaining wall. And then on the northern side, providing appropriate slopes to have access to the driveway. So we sort of, in a sense, tried to fit the building into the the hill to try to take up some of the grade change that occurred. And what this resulted in is that we have maximum cuts of 11 feet, maximum fills of 12 feet. So we tried to balance that. With that said, as you clearly know with your ordinance, you're actually only able to do a maximum of 2 foot of grade change. And for a site that has such great topography of 28 feet, there's virtually no design that could comply with only a 2 foot grade change. But we do feel by putting this building built into sort of into the embankment of the hill, and then having that, we were able to sort of balance the cut fill requirements.
Now, Eric, as it relates to that addition to the ordinance, I've heard Jim say many times over the years that was really put in to, one, help regulate single-family homeowners so they weren't raising and building their homes on hills, and to make sure that when the grade change does occur, it's not really against changes of grade, it's against a change of grade that's going to have a negative impact on any of the surrounding neighbors. So from an engineering perspective and the way this was designed, while we need the variance because in order to properly develop this property, we have to change the grade, are we addressing any of the potential drainage issues that would typically be associated with a change of grade like this? Meaning, are we creating any issue or are we addressing it all?
We're addressing all stormwater requirements. There are comments within the engineering review letter, but overall we'll address those comments so we'll have a fully functioning system.
But in your opinion, as from an engineering perspective, there's no negative impact to the surrounding neighbors relative to stormwater through this change of grade?
Oh, correct. This will be fully stabilized once it's constructed.
Okay.
What is the change of grade?
So the change of grade is, so there's a maximum of 11 foot of cut.
Meaning, just
Oh,
in
cut
layman's
means,
sense, you're
right.
taking it down 11 feet in some areas.
Correct, which would be on the southern side. And then on the northern side, there's a maximum of 12 feet of fill.
So we're essentially balancing the
We're
site.
talking about a 23-foot difference.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that 28 number, that's where we're at. So now, the next thing I need to go into is into the fence wall height requirements. So I think we handed out Exhibit A9.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going to walk you through this a little bit with the board because as a layperson, I had you prepare this in a way that I understood it. So hopefully the board will. So as the board knows, often when you have such varying grade changes, you have walls, and sometimes the massing of the wall is seen from outside of the property, and sometimes the massing of the wall is seen from inside the property. So what we attempted to do here with the arrows is to show where you're going to be viewing the height from in the first instance, and then also to break out and distinguish between, you have a requirement that if a fence is within 10 feet of a wall, you have to apply the combined height for it. As you're going to see in at least one, and I'd ask you to look at wall number 2 in the front, we actually have a 6-foot fence, and then a couple feet behind it at the same grade is a 1.5-foot wall. So the impact is only a 6-foot fence from the street. However, based on how your ordinance works, it would be 7.5 feet, even though it's not a wall and fence combination. So it's that kind of nuance. I think we should go through them one by one.
Yeah.
And
Yes, we will.
what we're showing you on A9 is the worst case scenario from each yard, meaning that's the worst variance we're asking for.
Okay, so we're going to start out with the walls in the front yard. So we're going to start out with retaining wall 1. So that is along Brielle frontage along the southern portion. So it's really, you can see these 3 different squares where the lawn area is that will have access from the mezzanines that you'll hear from the architect. So wall number 1 ranges in height with a combined of that 6-foot fence and wall. I'm going to give you the combined heights because your ordinance is written. The combined height for a front yard is 4 foot allowed. Side and rear is 8 feet. So I'm going to talk in regards to the combined numbers. That it starts out, it ranges from 7 feet on the southern side, which is the high side, to the worst case scenario, which you'll see an arrow sort of in this area right here. That's where it goes to 11 feet. So in a sense, you would see at the worst case scenario, you would see a 5-foot retaining wall with a 6-foot fence above it.
Now
to
the
get a
six,
total.
now the 6-foot fence that we're proposing though is not a solid fence, it's a decorative aluminum Jareth fence that's open.
Correct, and that's one of the better upgrades as well for this plan. The previous plan was approved with chain link fence. Now we're using decorative aluminum Jareth fence per the recommendations of your professionals.
And again, the wall in this fence, based on the dense plantings, and as you can see in the rendering, really won't be visible from the street, but technically it's a variance. But as it relates to visible impact, it's not a solid wall and a solid fence, it's just a wall with a decorative fence on top.
Correct. So we have 20 foot for wall 1. We have 20 foot of setback and plantings.
What?
To buffer that.
How high is the landscaping in front of that?
So I guess it's going to be 3.5-inch trees that will be branched up to the appropriate heights, and then we have the shrubs.
The shrubs, yeah, I'm thinking of the shrubs, because the trees aren't gonna screen it, but the shrubs will, and I'm trying to recall what types, what the
I
variety
didn't
is.
look at what I specified, but I usually specify between 24 to 36 inches for height.
What that's planting height, I'm thinking about mature height.
Right,
Oh, mature height, you're right, they could get up to 4 foot high, some of these shrubs, correct.
Well, do you want to take a quick look at your plan to see what you specified?
Yeah, we'll go through it, but yes,
Okay.
they will definitely grow in its grade. All right, so that's retaining wall 1. There's 4 total walls. So then retaining wall 2, that is an L-shaped fence, an L-shaped wall that actually is around the bioretention basin is actually recessed. So the bottom of the retention basin is actually below Brielle Avenue. So the grades inside this area of the basin are lower than Brielle Avenue. So there's, from the exterior, what you would see from Brielle Avenue looking in, then you would actually see an exterior, it would range from 6 feet, which is the fence height, to 7.5 feet. So there's not much retaining wall, only a maximum of 1.5 feet, that you would actually see along Brielle
But
Avenue.
Eric, so again, I want to just clarify. We're not proposing the fence on top of the wall, correct? We're proposing it in front of the wall.
Correct.
And the max height of the solid wall is 1.5 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so we're talking about 1.5 feet wall behind a decorative fence.
Correct.
So when you're saying 7.5 feet, I went to so much trouble to explain the location of it because it's not 7.5 feet. It's just a technical way that this ordinance is interpreted.
Well, actually, if that's the case, then I don't think a variance is necessary there, because the highest vertical element is gonna be the fence at 6
Correct.
feet. And if the wall is behind it
It is.
and starts at the same elevation basically as
Does.
the fence, so the combined height is still 6 feet.
Okay, fine.
So I just want to be
But
concerned.
it's still it's in front yard, so a variance.
Correct, so we still
is
need the variance
necessary.
for the 6-foot decorative fence, but again, we always, for notice purposes, always do it in the most conservative way possible and err on the side of safety. So again, so the wall height 2, it's 23 feet, but that's standing at the bottom of the basin.
Yeah, so that was what's called the portion of that wall parallel to Brielle Avenue. But there's also a perpendicular turn. So there's this wall that goes from the Brielle Avenue wall, goes towards the building. So that's where, since we've recessed the bioretention basin substantially, where you have a 17-foot high wall and a 6-foot fence for a total of 23 feet. So again, that's just this perpendicular section that's buffered not only from the plantings on Brielle Avenue, that's on the other side of the fence, it's also buffered by the plantings within the basin. So that's retaining wall number 2.
But, so again, the 23 feet is measured from the bottom of the basin. You're saying recessed, but it's basically dug out from behind it at a much lower grade. So from the street, nobody's seeing a 23-foot wall.
Correct, especially with that much vegetation.
Right.
So now I'll speak to the walls that we have on the side and the rear aspects of the project. So wall number 3 is along the northern property line and the western. So the northern side would be a side, and then the western one, that is considered the rear portion of the rear wall. So on the northern side, it really ranges from 6 to 18.5 feet. Where here in the worst case scenario, you'll see an arrow here where we have a 12.5-foot wall with a 6-foot fence in this corner for a total of 18.5 within the side yard, the northern side yard. The rear of the property, very close to you'll see another arrow very close to where you see this radius, and there's another arrow here. In the rear area, the worst case condition is 11.6-foot wall with a 6-foot fence for 17.6 total. And again, along the rear, we have that very large existing trees, buffers in that area, as well as we're proposing trees in the front of that wall along the north to sort of mitigate the aesthetics of that as well.
And this wall is again up along the back of an access drive and the rear access of another industrial building.
Correct, and judging by the picture, it looks like almost their pavement is very close to their side, our common side lot line. Retaining wall 4 is the last one. So retaining wall 4 is related to, remember we talked about that we took and recessed the building sort of into the hill to sort of lower it. So one of the aspects when you do that is that you do need to have, and the architect will speak to this, you need to have multiple access points out of a building per code. So this one has an egress door that's at a much lower elevation, and then stairs that bring you up to the grade. So from the interior, so you're standing at the bottom of that, the area there when you walk out the door and looking up, that's where you actually have an 11.5-foot wall at the worst case. Then it gets less as you go up the stairs. And then you also at that point have a 6-foot fence. So that gets you to a total of 17.5, but this is also only being seen from the interior. If you're standing on looking from the southern property line, all you're really going to see there basically is a 6-foot fence.
So it's basically from inside the stairwell at the bottom is where you'll see the wall.
That's correct.
Okay, and I just wanted to put on the record, just so the board is aware, under the prior approval, the fence wall height in the front yard approved was 13 feet, so we're actually improving that. And the fence wall height in the side and rear yards was previously approved at 20 feet, so we're actually improving that as well. So I just wanted to note that for the record. So we are trying to make it better through this redesign. It's just, we have the hardship of a topographically challenging site.
So that's how we accommodated the building. So the different elevations of the building, the different retaining walls, and the buffering, that's how we address the grade changes. Stormwater management, so we do need to address water quality, runoff reductions, groundwater recharge. So we're addressing that with a bioretention basin. This was similar technology that was proposed previously. It meets the latest NJDP green infrastructure requirements. There are comments within the engineering review letter, but I know that we can address all of those. For water, we are proposing a water service off to the existing main within Brielle Ave. This is New Jersey American Water Company territory, so we have the meter pit, which is flush to grade, but then we have the above grade backflow preventer that we have set back about 24 feet. The backflow preventers have to be above grade, so that's what we have that set back as much as we could there.
And I know that I've run into this in other municipalities, I'm not sure here, to the extent that we need variance relief for having accessory structures in a front yard, such as the hot box. I would just ask for it now. We don't have a choice about where we're placing these utility structures. These are being driven by the utility companies and they require them to be in this location. So just for purposes, and I don't know whether this board considers that a variance, but I just wanted to put it on the record and point it out. These are utility structures required by the utility company and they have to be in the front yard. But they are behind landscaping.
And I don't remember whether we've required variances for them or not.
I know you and I have had some experiences in other towns where it became an issue, so I just want to point it out to the board. So to the extent the variance is required, we'd seek it.
And staying on that same theme, we also have, because of the location requirements, we also have a transformer adjacent to Brielle Avenue as well for the electric company to have access. So we also have that in the front based upon their requirements. And then we have sanitary sewer connecting up to Brielle Ave. You know, self-storage really doesn't generate a lot of sanitary sewer, but we have that abilities for
Okay. Before I open up the questions here, I just want to ask you guys, because there's a lot to digest here. How you feeling about the structure here? Is there things that you're having questions about, things you're not comfortable with, things we want to talk about? Like what?
I think they've answered most of my concerns. I think it's a much better application than the ones that's approved.
Okay, well, when you say most, are there other concerns that you have that haven't been answered?
But I don't think questions I had haven't been answered. I think they've all
Okay.
been answered.
And Mr. Chair, just so you know, we did meet, excuse me, I'm sorry, in concept with Ben and Jim before we filed the
Mhm.
application to make sure that we were going in the right direction and addressing their concerns before coming in, recognizing how difficult this site was. So I don't know if you guys knew that. I just wanted you to know that we did
Yeah.
avail ourselves of that ahead
Okay,
of
good.
time.
So, Ben, do you have?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First one is pretty minor. One of my comments in the lighting section was about a light along that southern entrance by the stairwell. I don't think there was one on the plan. Is that can there be like a building mounted sconce or something?
We definitely have emergency light there. Definitely.
Okay. And then the main thing is regarding stormwater management. The regulations that were passed in 2023 require planning for future rainfall events to the 2050 and 2100, and it requires basically a factor of safety with regard to the rainfall intensity, and by implementing that may result in modifications to the stormwater management system. Is that going to require like enlarging the basin or anything like that?
I think we had some buffer in the design, so I don't anticipate anything substantial to address the stormwater comments.
Okay. I guess I can't tell you whether or not that the site is going to change, if whether that anything would change if the basin is enlarged or anything else. But I don't doubt that the site can accommodate that comment. I just don't have it on the plan.
I will say this, if we do need to elongate the basin and things of that nature, we would not exceed any of the retaining wall heights and all those things that we just expressed. We wouldn't ever increase those if we did have to modify things. We'd maintain any relief that would hopefully be granted by the board.
Right.
Well, Ben, are you asking for it to be addressed now?
I guess that's my one concern, is that the changing or accounting for additional stormwater runoff may result in a change to the basin or the parking lot or something like that. But if it doesn't, then that's fine. If it does, then it may. I don't know if it would result in any additional variances or any changes, but I would agree that it can be changed without changing the wall heights. I don't think that there would be any other variances off the top of my head.
I can address that, Mr. Weinstein. So
Sure.
as is typically the case, when the board would grant an approval subject to the review and approval of Jim and Ben, if there's any material change to either the site plan, the layout, or creation of new variances, they would automatically send us back to the board to amend the approval. I mean, it's really that simple. So if we can accommodate his comments and not make any material changes that affect the layout or create any new variances, then this will be the same as every application that you would approve conditioned upon their review. And certainly we agree that any material change that changes the layout significantly or creates any new variances, we'd have to come back for an amended approval.
But it sounds like it sounds like you're not that. It sounds like you want it to be addressed up front.
I was putting it out there as something that I think is going to change. I don't know that it would change the site layout or anything like that. So I think I would be okay with what Ms. Grimco offered, and if I see that it does materially change the plan, then I would agree that they would have to come back to the board.
So just so I'm clear, so the applicant is agreeing to move forward, understanding that they might need to come back
100%.
for the stormwater.
And that's, listen, anytime we agree to address a stormwater comment, there's always that risk. because you don't know until you get out and do the engineering and design it if there's a change. And over the years, there's been lots of times where we did that, and we ended up coming back either to this board or the zoning board to say we tried to do it and it didn't work. Most of the time it doesn't, which is, why we're able to work it out with them administratively. Sure.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. We were just compounding on a lot of stuff. Is there more things that you wanted to kind of address?
No, that was it.
That was the end of my
That was
list.
it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Does anybody here have anything that did you want to talk anything about what's going on inside, or
Yeah, that's a different witness.
Okay, great. Okay. Before this person leaves, was anybody here who'd like to ask any questions to this individual?
My question's inside.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're taking down a significant amount of trees. You're not a landscape architect.
I'm not a landscape architect.
You took the liberty of making a landscape plan.
We
Did you review the Environmental Commission's letter on July 29th?
we did.
You did?
Yeah, we spoke to that we would work out the landscaping
Okay.
with your planner.
So when was this plan created that you're showing us?
This
When
is
are
the same plan that was originally
That was
submitted.
sent to
Yeah.
the Environmental Commission. Is there plantings and other things that you
We
plan
can
to
co-
change
yes.
based on?
So what was offered at the beginning is that we will work with Jim to address all those comments to his satisfaction,
Okay.
as we always do.
Thank you.
There was nothing in the Environmental Commission's letter that was
Suggesting
troublesome. It was really
a
about,
landscape architect submitting a plan,
right,
which he isn't.
right.
That's one of the variances they're requesting.
Okay.
And it is typical for this board, again, if you want a landscape architect to also review it and sign it. I don't think that's necessarily a big problem, but typically the board has always deferred to Jim as to that, but again.
Thank you.
Okay.
We didn't see anything problematic. It really was with regard to species types and spacing on planting, which we don't disagree with.
Okay.
I got a few questions.
Yep.
So the first one is you made a comment that the site will be stabilized when it's finished. What are you going to do during construction to stabilize the soil and the runoff? Because we've had problems with other development on that section of town.
Definitely. So we're going to go for, if we were to receive approval, we would go for soil erosion certification. We've already submitted to them. They've had a couple of comments. We'll address all of their comments, address all the soil erosion design, and then during construction, we notify them so they'll be out for inspections as free. So we'll be following the freehold soil conservation's requirements for all stabilization, as well as any other township requirements, obviously, also.
Okay. Can you just point out on there all the areas that will be covered in sod?
Anything that's basically green, except portions of the bioretention basin, that would be a wet seed mix. But all the green areas you see, that would be typically lawn, that would be sod.
So here's my question. So those, you were showing the walls and the elevations, and I tried really hard to follow, and I'm not sure I did. But you have those three rectangles, squares, whatever they are, right there. Yep. Those are all different elevations, and they're all going to be sodded.
Those are all the same elevation, I think.
So right here, so you're talking about these three right here.
Right.
Those would be sodded. Those would be lawn areas.
But how are they separated?
Oh, there's actually a dividing fence, I think, between them as well.
So how are they going to get mowed? Or are they not going to get mowed? And that's fine.
No, they're going to have to be gates. They're going to have to be gates. I agree. They're going to have to be gates that would allow access from one point to another. I agree to have access to do that.
Okay. And
So there is no, I will say this, on this edge here, there is no retaining wall there. So
Okay.
from this edge, it's at grade, but will we have to add gates in between these to properly maintain them? Correct. And we are, I didn't say, but we did agree on the plans, we're also providing irrigation as well for the project, as required. But that's going to help with the sod growing and such.
Okay. I guess, and Jim, I'm going to defer to you here. So, having driven out there and looked at that site and looked at the other treat areas, it's sandy soil with scrub brush, right? There's not a lot of naturally occurring grass out there. And I'm wondering if it doesn't make more sense for some of those, especially those parcels in there, to be naturalized because they're going to be behind that screen already.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Can we make that change and have those areas?
Sitting out there.
They will be accessible from the unit. I don't know that people
Oh.
will be sitting from out there, but it's part of the view out of the window. I'd like to let the architect
Okay.
speak to that design because he created them.
Then I will
If we
pin
could-
that
yeah,
comment.
if we can.
I thought they were just sodded for the sake of sodding. If
No, they're actually going to be. They're part of the view that you'd have from inside those units.
So it may be that they could be landscaped from the inside and be more.
Correct. It could be right.
Okay.
It probably won't be visible from the outside.
It won't be visible from the outside, and it may. Yeah. So if I could just defer that to the architect.
Sure. And then I know that you mentioned the EV charging. Bennett had a comment in his about the roof runoff. Are you doing a green roof or any solar or any other fun things with the roof?
I'm gonna leave that for the architect.
Okay.
I know we're not doing a green roof. I can stipulate to that, but as far as the rest of the roof, I'm gonna leave that to the architect.
Okay. All right.
Hey, I'm kind of, this might not be a question for you, or it might not be a relevant question. I'm just kind of curious because of the valuables that are going to be in there. Is the only security the gated access, or is there a security guard there, or like or is that not?
The owner will testify, but there'll be cameras. It'll be central monitoring. There'll be a building manager. There'll be all of those things.
Okay, so somebody will talk to us about that.
Yeah, there'll be inside cameras, outside cameras. There's going to be cameras everywhere. It's all going to be connected to central monitoring.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get to that when it's time to get to it. Okay, cool.
I'll be here.
Okay.
If something comes up.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the public, Mr. Chairman.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Anybody?
Everybody here is part of the applicant's team.
Well, let me just say it. Anybody from the public like to make a comment? Okay. Let's go to the next person. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Dave Collins, who I know the board's familiar with. Let's have him sworn.
Mr. Collins, do you swear any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name for the record.
David Collins.
And you are a licensed architect, state of New Jersey?
I am.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, Dave, why don't you, let me just, the architecture plans are A4 into evidence, so why don't you just walk the board on your schematic, what we're proposing by way of the building. We'll talk about the interior, and then we'll talk about the outside and those outside areas.
Sure. So I just wanted to spend a minute talking about the grade again. I know it's a little bit confusing. If you imagine a walkout basement that people have in their house, maybe there's a ranch house where it's 1 story in the front and the yard slopes down and it's 2 stories in the back. That's essentially what we have, but instead of facing the back, we're facing the side with that walkout basement. So when you look at the southern elevation, it's a 1-story building, and when you look at the north elevation, it's a 2-story building because of that change in grade as Brielle Avenue goes down the hill. And what's been done is the front of that's carved out for the basin. So the basin is down in a hole, as is the building, and the building retains everything, holds the hill back and allows us to have a 2-story building that functions on this site. So I just wanted to quickly just show that before we went to the inside of the building.
Okay. Thanks.
So again, staying on A4, these are the floor plans that were part of your package A201. Starting at the bottom left, drawing number 3 is the ground floor level. So when we say ground floor, that's cut into, you may consider the basement really, it's cut into the hill. So on the right side of this plan, you'll see an overhead door entrance and a couple of exit doors. And down through the center of the building, there's a drive aisle. So this allows cars to drive into the building and drive into any of those units, whether it's for loading or whether it's for storing. So from the parking lot, which is in this area, you drive down, you can go into your unit, and then obviously you can back out and exit. This drive aisle is designed just like a parking lot drive aisle. It's 24 feet wide. It's the same width for two-way traffic. And there are only 16 units here, so this is not going to be heavily trafficked, but it is wide enough to be able to negotiate cars in and out through this main aisleway. And on the lower level, there are again 8 units face towards Brielle Avenue, 8 units face towards the back of the site. Again, all of this, there's no windows in this area because we're kind of underground this whole area. And that is the reason that we needed this exterior stairwell that's down in the ground, so that if there's ever an emergency, anyone on this level can exit out through the north side of the site to the parking lot, or to the south side of the site up the stairs to grade and then exit safely to the street. So this was one of the wall conditions, but the reality is that's just a hole in the ground with a set of stairs that go down to that basement kind of level. The level above that, which we call the mezzanine level, is again divided 8 units towards Brielle Avenue, 8 units towards the back of the site. So you can see that each unit is 2 stories, whether you're in the back units or whether you're in the front units. Once you get inside your unit, you have a staircase to get you up to this kind of mezzanine loft area. And in all of these areas, in all of these units, there is a double height space. So it's not 2 full floor plates. It's a floor plate, full floor plate on the ground floor and a partial floor plate on the upper floor, and you can look down in your unit to the lower level. So if we just take a random unit, you can come in the exit door or the man door. You can go up the stairs. There's a bathroom on the lower level. You can go up the stairs. When you come up the stairs, you have the private viewing area here, and you have a porch in the front. And the same thing in the back units. You can come up the stairs. In these ones, we actually put the floor plate over the drive aisle, so the opening is more towards the exterior, but we also have a walkway to a porch on the back side. The last drawing is drawing number 2. It is the roof plan. So we are going to be solar ready, so we're going to design the building so that solar panels, it can take the additional weight of the solar panels, so those can be installed at any time. And what we did is we consolidated in the center of the building a farm for all of the mechanical equipment. So each of these units is going to have a condensing unit, and each of these units is going to have a generator, so that each one of these units can function independently from the others, can be climate controlled to whatever the person wants to, separate from everybody else. And we have that screen with the rooftop screen that goes around the entire farm, and there's a couple entrances for servicing that face towards the back. The reason we face them towards the back is because of the extreme topography dropping off in the back. There is no possible way you could see up over the profile of the roof to see onto this roof. In fact, even from the highest part of Brielle Avenue, you probably won't even see the equipment screen just because of the way the roof plane projects forward. It's going to kind of block your line of sight. This is a rendered view, which is it, 9? 10. A10. So this is exhibit A10. So this is a rendered view. Obviously, if you're standing in Brielle Avenue on the northern part of the site where the entrance is to the parking area, this is where this view is taken from. And so we're trying to show here is the actual view of what you'll see from the street. And if we were to have taken this, further up the hill, it would be even more buffered. We took it from kind of the most open piece of the site. So up here, you're not really going to see much. You're going to see a lot of landscaping. But as an example, you can see a little peak of light color here behind this fence, and that's actually the bottom part of the retaining wall that is behind that fence. So you do get a little peekaboo here, but this fence wraps around to the front. This area is the basin that drops down into a hole. So way back in there is that tall wall we're talking about that's kind of holding back the earth so we can store the stormwater on the site. And because that's vegetated even on the inside of that wall, it's going to be nearly impossible to ever see that wall. Even if you were down a little further to the north, it'd be very, very difficult to see into that area. So for the architecture, we wanted a really kind of crisp, modern building. We don't we don't have we don't have any signage except for the emergency numbers. This is really kind of just a low key place for 16 people to go and store their things. It's not intended to be overly flashy. That's why we use darker colors on it. But we did kind of create a rhythm across the front, and we created these porches so that we had a little bit of depth in the facade. It wasn't just a big kind of warehouse box. We wanted to have some visual interest along the front, and also gave a nice place for people, if they're viewing their assets inside, they can step outside and kind of get some fresh air and enjoy that. So we have a wood effect on these columns to separate these. Glass storefront that wraps across the front and wraps around the corner. The roof plane, slopes up and cantilevers out to really kind of express that horizontal. And then inside this, wall and gate is the entrance to the garage door, and we kind of express that as a drop down area. We brought these two pieces up and dropped this down, and then now we're to the back units, which are pretty much the same as the front units. You have some of the wood effect and the glass and the porches, to try to create some relief along that facade.
And as it relates to those 3 lawn areas, what was the idea behind that?
Okay.
Did you just say what exhibit it is?
No.
A8.
A8, okay. I'm just referring back to A8. You okay? Okay. So the idea of these 3 areas is that they could become gardens. So we're trying to create some variation in the unit. So there are some units that are corner units that are more attractive than an interior unit. And so we had the opportunity, since the grade was high here, to retain this a little bit and create an area where you can spill out from your patio or porch onto this garden area, whether it's grass or planted out. It could be kind of a private area that's not seen from the street, that these 3 units on this southeast corner of the building could have private access to.
And so it would be maintained from either inside the building or access from the north side.
Right, I agree a series of gates are required, and you can access that at grade from this area straight into each of those for any kind of maintenance. You have to pull something out or mow or whatever, you could get through that way.
And again, this is really just to set an ambiance because of this luxury level asset. So when people walk in, it gives them this feeling that they're in someplace other than an industrial storage unit.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I have a question. Are those bathrooms inside the units?
Yes, each unit has a bathroom.
This is a hell of a club. I don't know where you guys get asset self-storage from. Porches, gardens. Like, who's going to monitor the fact that this doesn't turn into a club?
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question off of that, just from a legal perspective. Are we having events in?
No.
I have my art collection. I want to show it off to my friends. Do I have them all over and have hors d'oeuvres, and I have my bathroom there?
The guy next to you's got all the wine, apparently.
I'm just trying to see what this is becoming, because I've never heard of a self-storage place with a bathroom per unit. I understand it's luxury, but this is almost
porch, and gardens.
So if I may, Mark, it's kind of a new thing. They have this thing, garage condos, where they sell them each one has a bathroom, maybe a bar, maybe
These
a pool
will be
table.
sold. These are all going to be privately
Okay, so it
owned.
is exactly like I thought. So it's a new thing. It's been out a couple years. You can go on YouTube and see them. They're beautiful.
The owner, if I get, again, the owner is here, not the owner, the principal in the applicant entity is here to talk about the concept. It just would have been impossible to discuss the concept without you understanding the site and the building first.
Okay, good. Well, let's have them talk about the you have some questions here? Okay.
There is no community room. It's not like the car club that the zoning.
Let's put that aside, because we'll have somebody else talk to that. Let's stick to his testimony, and let's ask questions related to that. So, Ed, do you want to ask a question on that?
So just on these generators, are these emergency generators, each backup gas-powered emergency generators for each unit?
Yes.
Separate? Okay. And is there any, I'm trying to think of my spacing here to the nearest residential. Assume the power goes out and every one of those generators is running. What kind of decibel creation? They're going to be able to hear it?
I I can't answer that question. I'm not an acoustic engineer. I can say to you they're essentially residential units. So those same units that would be on a residence, that's what we'd have here. And we are far away from a residence. We're all surrounded by industrial here.
Sure, except you're at the crest of the hill, and the nearest residential is, call it a block and a half away to the north. So, I mean, sound would travel because there's no trees to block it.
Yeah, but we do have an equipment screen around it too.
Okay. I guess that would. Ben, do you have any concerns about that one?
I was going to ask the same question, and I was going to ask: is the metal equipment screen, does that have any type of like sound attenuation or sound dampening?
We certainly could integrate some. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be.
So
a
add
condition
sound
I'd-
attenuation around the generators?
Yeah, only because again, if there's another Sandy and all those generators are going at once, listen, you're going to store expensive items in there. I think it makes sense to have generators to maintain it, but they're going to be elevated. That's one of the highest points in the town, and they're going to all be going at once. So, yeah.
Jim or Bennett, do you have things that you want to ask this individual?
Again, I don't see where they haven't answered everything I asked. The one comment with the generators is to understand that if you have 19 generators, the sound isn't 19 times louder. The attenuate, the sound increases very little bit as you add each generator. So it might be the sound of what you would think is 2 generators if you have like 19 going.
I don't think we saw or heard testimony about the size of the generator or the volume it's producing.
Well,
So
that's true, absolutely.
No, it was a fair point. They're residential generators, and we'll put a sound attenuation around them.
and I think that addresses my concerns.
Okay.
Okay, Bennett,
I agree with that too.
did you have any other things though to ask him?
I don't think so. I think they covered everything.
Okay, what about anybody from here, anything that they want to ask? No? Okay, I think we can move on.
Could we take a 3-minute health break?
Um,
Okay, we don't have
sure,
to.
sure, we can take, yep, we'll take 3 minutes.
All right.
All right? Okay, let's get back to the task at hand.
Hold on. That's a whole new thing.
Okay, everybody settle down, ready to
Just
go?
for the record, everyone who was on the board prior to the break has returned to the day.
Thank you.
All right,
All right,
you're welcome.
my could-be final witness, depending on if you decide you need planning testimony or not. This is not the planner. This is Sam Sonny Carey. If I have him sworn, he'll tell you who he is and what his relationship is to the
Do you
application.
affirm any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And just state your name for the record.
Sonny Carey, SONNYCAYRE.
Okay, and your relationship to the applicant?
We are the contract purchaser.
You're
I'm
a
the
principal in the
of contract
entity.
purchaser, correct.
Principal in the entity. All right, thank you.
All right, so Sonny, obviously this was your vision, and it sounds like Mr. Beal is aware of this vision. Yeah. And it sounds like he might be happy that it's coming to
Send you a
Ocean.
brochure.
It's coming to Ocean Township. So why don't you give the board some background as to what the vision is for this location, recognizing that there is a car club with a social element across the street that isn't what this is.
Will do. So I prepared something to read to the board, and then after that we could address any questions. Good evening. My name is Sonny Carey, and I'm a principal of BC Brielle LLC, which is the contract purchaser of the subject property. We hope to develop Corsa, a private, high-end self-storage complex that will comprise of 16 for-sale private storage units. So, unlike larger self-storage facilities you might be familiar with, offering small units to a large number of people for monthly rental, we are proposing larger units for sale to a small number of users who are high net worth individuals who have collectibles that they prefer to keep in a highly secure area outside of their homes. We hope to deliver simple yet aesthetically beautiful units which will feature roughly 1,000 square feet of ground level storage space primarily intended for cars and or motorcycles, and a mezzanine space geared towards the storage of art, wine, and other collectibles. The units will be accessed via a 2-way interior central drive aisle that runs parallel to Brielle Avenue down the spine of the structure, eliminating the need for individual exterior facing doors for each unit and substantially reducing the activity visible from the street. Deliveries to the building for art, wine, antiques, or similar collectibles will be made using box trucks or smaller vehicles that will park in a parking spot in our proposed lot. Cars or motorcycles stored on site will be driven directly into the units. We anticipate owners visiting the facility at a maximum once a week and foresee minimal trash generation as a result. Security will be a top priority. The units will be accessible to their respective owners 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Owners will need to provide credentials to enter the street-facing gated entrance into the parking lot, and will then proceed to enter into the building either through the vehicle door or the man door. Once inside, each of the units will be accessed via key card held only by the owner. Individual units will have their own security systems and cameras as desired by the owners. Additionally, the complex itself will be well equipped with cameras and 24/7 monitoring by live agents from a remote facility. All of our units will be individually climate controlled and feature proper exhaust ventilation. Once the units are sold, the facility will be operated and maintained by an association board formed by the owners that will be responsible for maintaining the common areas of the building and its surrounding grounds. We are aware of a car club being built just across the street from our facility and are excited about the potential ways the two projects can complement one another. The two projects' uses, though somewhat related, are drastically different. While the aforementioned car club seeks to serve as a social hub for like-minded car enthusiasts, our facility intends to be much more private in nature. Corsa is designed for individuals who want to keep their high-end collectibles, not just limited to cars, to themselves in a secure environment, ready to greet them whenever they choose to access it. That's all I have prepared. I could take questions, or I could speak to some of the questions that were raised.
Why don't you speak to some of the questions that were raised first with regard to the fact that you have these visual amenities like a porch or a yard area, how that's not turning into a social area but is really just an amenity for the person visiting their collectibles.
Sure. So we spent a lot of time planning this, and we went back and forth as to what we should include in these units. And the overall vision that guided all of our design direction in all this was we need to make this a luxury place that will justify a high sales price to whoever we're looking to sell it to. That will be, a complementary environment to what they have stored inside of there. So the assets that we think are going to be stored inside here are very high in value. We wanted to make sure that the people that are buying these things, they probably have beautiful homes within 20 minutes of this place with a garage that they could fit them in. We wanted to create a really unique space that feels light, that feels airy, that's super luxurious, that they'd be able to store them into. And so hence the creation of the porches that we have coming out on the sides of the units. We felt like that added a lot to the airiness of the space and the perception of the unit being, within a luxury facility instead of just being a typical industrial building where you walk into a unit and you have 4 white walls and they say, hey, you could put your stuff here. We wanted it to be a little bit more luxurious and more of an experience for each owner.
And then also as it relates to a bathroom in each unit, if you're spending the money to purchase this
Correct.
unit and store your collectibles, you don't want to have to go downstairs and around to a common bathroom. You wanted to give each unit owner the luxury of having their own private bathroom facility.
Correct. The type of clientele that we expect to have in this facility would, in our eyes, expect to have their own private bathroom when they're visiting their assets.
Okay, so let me ask a couple of things for the team here, okay? So so they visit once a week. Give me what you envision this scenario is, and let me kind of lead you on to this. Is it I'm bringing 5 of my buddies with me, and we're gonna go look at my stuff and sit on the porch and start drinking wine and having some fun and doing that stuff? Like, what are we doing? Are we checking on the stuff, or are we having a good old time looking at the stuff? Like, what are we doing?
It's an excellent question, and one that we thought about. Prior to entering into contract to purchase this property, we were already familiar with the car club being developed across the street. We're actually good friends with the man who's developing that property. And what we ultimately thought was anybody who's, and not judging anybody, but anyone who's the type of person where, they're looking to enter into that whole show off my asset scene and talk about exactly what I have and what I bought, and have people looking at what I have, would more likely be a candidate for the building across the street. Park your cars there, have it all be visible to the public, get together with friends there, have a drink. We don't anticipate this project to serve that use at all. We really mean for this to just be a unit for a high net worth individual who's private about his stuff, who has a bunch of super luxurious assets, to keep them outside of his home. And so if he wants on a Sunday morning to go and swap out one car for another, he'll visit the facility, take the car out, swap it with the other, and take that one for the next few days until the next time, that he wants to come and change it within the unit. We don't see this as a get-together place where people are going to be, especially with the things that they're housing there. We don't think they're going to want people to be walking all around there and using their private space.
And additionally, you're
Why the 19 spots?
The 19 spots in the exterior parking lot.
Yeah.
We figured one per unit because if you have these units without stackers.
Well, let me just do a little math for you. Okay.
Sure.
So you said, so what you envision is somebody comes in, takes the car, swaps it for another car, and then leaves, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't seem like it's a long process, right?
Not at all.
So I guess what I'm wondering is once a week, people are coming in, coming out. Why the 19? The 19 spots, I think, starts making us believe that there is going to be Party Time USA, right? Now, by the way, I'm not even sure if that's...
No, so the in fairness, and Sonny, I don't remember if you were in the meeting or not, the number of spots was based on what we expected the concerns of the board to be if we showed up and gave you one spot and said we comply with the ordinance. So we maxed out the parking based on our meetings with Ben and Jim to say, here's what fits here. We can reduce the parking. We don't need those 19 spots.
Okay.
I think the other thing is, there's a vision they have for this building, but how is that going to be enforced? Are there going to be documents, condominium documents that say they cannot have parties in the units, they can't have more than 3 people visiting a unit at a time, something like that? It's great to have the vision, but just because you have the vision doesn't mean that's what's going to happen.
It's an excellent
There
point.
have to be controls.
And you're not going to be there because you're selling all these units. You're not going to be on the board, and it's going to be off on their own.
Correct. So the intention is to have guidelines versus for what one unit owner can do within the facility, because obviously everyone would be impacted by, for example, loud noise coming from one unit constantly, right, or anything like that. And so the condo board would be in charge of managing that and enforcing those rules.
So what we're asking for, then, at least I think what's being asked for, is some sort of restriction within the documents that you can't have gatherings.
Yeah.
Because you're using the car
You
example.
can't lease the place. You can't, turn it into a
absolutely
social
not.
gathering. But you
Yeah.
move the cars out, and you got beautiful porches and all sorts of stuff.
We're focusing upon cars, but there's also, what about the art? So I set up I have my art collection in there,
absolutely.
and then I want to show people my art collection, and so I'm going to have people come over, and we're going to look at the art collection.
Yeah.
So how do we regulate that?
Yeah, and I think probably the board has to put conditions in any approval. And in order to get those conditions, they have to have something from you saying, here's what we're going to do, so that they can say, okay, here's what the applicant testified to, and so therefore this is a condition of the application.
For sure, very reasonable, and we'd be happy to do that.
But I think that's something that needs to be done much more specific.
Okay.
If I may,
Thank you.
I'm for whatever reason I'm very familiar with this
Yeah.
this concept. I've sent the board a couple of YouTube videos about pretty much this exact same thing in other places. What they're building, the people buying this, they're not partying. They're very, they may have private jets, things like, they're not those people. And if they have a couple people come over to look at it, it'll be wine, not tossing back shots. These aren't. Trust me. They just look at the stuff I sent you.
I don't think that's the. I don't think. Yeah, but I don't.
Well, let me finish. Additionally, I think they won't be able to control that. It'll be a condo association with 16. How many units?
16.
16 votes, and they'll be able to develop their rules and procedures and policies. That'll be commensurate with what's going on in the community. I in my opinion. Again, it's not built, it's not approved, but I think this will be one of the few places in town we have to worry about.
Let me just say something. Let me just say something about this. So first of all, it's in an area that's being deemed as a storage facility. It's not being
Again,
set up.
You'd have to look at the videos.
The video is not relevant to this because it's being zoned and being committed to as a storage facility, right? It wasn't set up as luxury asset condominium association, right? It was set up as a self-storage facility. So if it's going to behave as a self-storage facility, it should behave as a self-storage facility.
That's what I said.
And again,
Right. No, but I'm just telling my fellow board member that I think he's off track on this.
It's your storage
I don't
facility.
think he's off track, and I'll tell you why. Their best wines, their best cars, and their best art is in their home.
Right.
And it's a multi-million dollar home. They're putting their extra stuff in that unit, and they're not going to go have parties with the extra stuff there. That's what I too damn poor.
And what I said to you is
We
storage.
can-
You
wait,
have to
wait.
see it
We
before
can
you comment on
agree.
what I said.
They're not disagreeing. I don't know why they're not
So
disagreeing.
we can agree. Now again, I don't know how many people. I know Sonny comes from a family of 3 boys. If his father had stuff there, they might have to all go help him move or take or do. We can agree that we're limited to 5 people in a unit at any given time. There are not going to be parties here. If the board wants to impose that condition, we're okay with that.
Mark, do we even have the power to do that?
Absolutely.
I
you
think
do.
it's a fire code would be our limit.
No. So, Mr. Beal, so again, and I usually don't advocate the position of the board. However, if this were to be a social gathering place, it would no longer be a storage unit.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, so it would be a different use, and we would need a use variance the same way that we needed a use variance for the car club. So the car club didn't come to this board, and it was because of the lounge within the car club that made it from a storage unit to a club. So recognizing that we're in front of the planning board, and the planning board can't give us approval for a use that isn't permitted, we recognize in the event this condo board ever wants to change that, they will have to go to the zoning board and
We're
get a
saying the
use
same thing.
variance.
We're saying the
Correct. So
same
we're
So
okay.
to answer
We're
Mr.
okay.
Beal's question, yes, you have that exact power. And what the condition would be is that they said 5 people. I'm fine with that. So there will have to be a clause within the bylaws.
Or we could just deed restrict it by it'll be a condition of the approval.
It would be a deed restriction within the bylaws of the association that they cannot have any more than 5 people in a unit at any one time. And if they want to change that, they've got to come back here and ask for that relief, because that keeps it in the spirit of what's being proposed here. Even if you're right, Mr. Beal, in that no one would ever do what other board members are thinking could potentially happen, it safeguards everything and it keeps the use what is being proposed and not transferring.
Right, and the
I
only
have a 7-passenger SUV parked here. I can't bring my family of 7 to get in? That doesn't make any sense.
Gathering.
Okay.
We're not talking about the cars. Everyone's focusing upon the cars. I think the bigger concern
talking about
is
hanging out
We're talking about
in
hanging
there.
out upstairs.
I agree with you guys. What I'm saying is, just by coincidence, I happen to be very familiar. I don't see any of these issues, but go ahead.
Okay, but Mark, can I just ask you a question? As for alleviating any deed restriction, I'd ask that it be able to be done by either the planning board or the zoning board, because if we're going for a use variance, I don't want to have to come here first.
That's obvious. Yeah.
Well, it's not obvious. It may be obvious to us.
Yeah.
20 years from now, it might not be obvious.
Fair
So
enough.
I'm just asking
Yeah.
if it goes there to just make that clear.
I also want to bring up that if you have art storage, sometimes that's for selling art. You store the art there so you could show it to buyers. If you restrict it to 5 people, you're leaving out art advisors and other parties that might want to be involved in the sale.
You're comfortable with 5?
How many
I think we're getting, please, everybody stop for a second, because we're really getting off track. The application was for a self-storage environment, right? We're getting way off track. We're not creating an environment that's beyond the rights of a self-storage environment. That's what we're not going to do, because that's what it was asked for. That was the application for a self-storage environment. It's not our job to figure out how to create some kind of quasar so that people could do whatever they want inside of this. So we're approving or not approving a self-storage environment, which will have some restrictions on what it is, because they're presenting things that seem to be a little bit atypical self-storage environment.
Right, like
so
I
we could
can-
all stop with what our personal preferences are, what might be, what could have been. We're doing a self-storage environment.
And I can just say that having gotten a self-storage facility approved here in town and getting the car club approved here in town, the self-storage facility that we got approved were cubicles with no windows. So they could have imposed that to ensure it was a self-storage use, but it wasn't something that the board thought of because there were those amenities. So we understand.
Let me just say one thing too. Also, if he wanted to have this be where people can have art showings and art galleries, he can have an application for an art gallery. If he wants to have parties, he wants to do something like that, other than that self-storage, he could do that as well.
Chairman, excuse me. I don't know where the party thing came from. I've been on the board 3 years. I rarely speak. So when I do speak, I don't want to be censured. It is a self-storage unit. If you look at what I sent you, it's all storage. It's the same thing. It's just a concept.
It's a
so I just want to make you sure that you understand what I'm saying. I agree it's storage, not a party place or any of this other stuff that I don't know where that came from. And I don't know why we would limit them to 5 people to gather at once. It makes no sense to me.
Because you don't gather. I mean,
I didn't
from
say party.
a legal perspective, because
I
from
didn't
a
say
legal
party.
perspective, you don't gather in a self-storage facility.
I disagree.
I'm involved in our consulting firm where there are always people showing artwork that's going to be sold. And they go to an independent storage facility. They don't want to go to someone's house. They'll put it in a storage facility and they'll show it to the people who need to see it. It happens all the time. That's not
Jack,
a
we
gathering.
appreciate that. We don't need more than 5 people to look at that.
I don't agree.
I don't agree either. I think you need more.
Then we're gonna.
What's
then,
going on
Then
here?
we will come back for an amendment to the approval if that should occur. Right now, we're looking to get it built within the confines of your law. We knew that this issue was going to come up. It came up during our tech review, and when we looked at what we're building, it doesn't look like 1800 Highway 35, which is self-storage. But we understand it's a new concept. We'd like to get the building built, get it evolved, and should the association want to expand it in some way, they can either come back to this board to expand that, or they can go to the zoning board for a use variance. But we appreciate the comments, and we don't disagree with you, but we also recognize what the law says, and I know Mark a long time, and I know where this would go, and if we tried to verge that way, we would be right in front of the zoning board. So, we get it.
God help you with the zoning board.
I have a question. So, say I wanted to come to my unit and pick up my car that's in storage. Would I pull into the parking lot and leave my car there and take my other car out?
Potentially.
And then is there anything to prevent the parking lot from filling up and then there being nobody there and then there's nowhere to park if somebody comes in?
Again, recognizing the types of vehicles that would be stored here and exchanged, we don't anticipate people leaving their cars in the parking lot. And what would prevent it would be, this is going to be owner run. If someone is leaving their car there they're going to be told by the association that you can't do that. I don't think that that's the kind of thing that would need to be hyper-regulated by the board, because I think the other owners are going to be there and it's all going to be regulated by them.
Actually, can we go back to this parking? This idea that you don't need 19 spots. Can we swap out some spots for trees? Is that an option on the table? I'm all about dropping parking minimums. If the applicant's saying that they don't need them, to our professionals, do we need them?
Well, it's the applicant's application. They're proposing this number of parking spots. I would say that it makes sense to have 1 spot per unit because of that exact scenario I just described. If you only had 1 parking spot, then theoretically only 1 person could drop their car off and take their car out at a time.
I think also, Mr. DeFilia, one thing to look at is the future. Mm-hmm. We hope this works out and this is the best thing ever. But we're building a building, and if it ever needs to be adaptively reused in the future and come back for another, we just want to make sure that we're not building a building that's going to become obsolete either.
Fair enough.
So I think this is a nice balance. It's a tremendous improvement over the prior approval as it relates to trees. I think that it's going to be the best landscape property in all of this industrial zone, hands down. So I understand your concern, but I think you need to look at the future. I've done enough applications 30 years after a building is built saying, hey, we thought this, but this is what. So I think you just want to balance that and not create a building that will have no use in the future.
Okay. I'm not really sure where we are right now. Does anybody have any questions for this individual?
I do. Do you have a price projection?
We're looking at about $600 a foot.
Do you have another question?
Well, there's going to be association fees, but he can't know what that is right now.
No, they would have to do the pro forma.
I'm all over.
So anybody else? Anybody else? Ben, Jim, anything you guys have? Mark, anything?
I'm satisfied.
Now, Mr. Chair, I do have a planner here, but recognizing that almost all of the variances we need are driven by the engineering of the site,
Yeah.
meaning I'll leave it to the board and to Jim as to whether or not planning testimony is needed or whether or not the proofs given by the architect and the engineer were sufficient to satisfy the variances as outlined.
And I'll tell you, I don't need to hear from a planner in order to satisfy me.
Right.
I'll leave it back.
Jim and
As
Ben.
long as the board is comfortable, I don't really like to pull the rug out from under another planner.
He gets
But at the
paid.
same-
He gets
I
paid
know.
anyway.
I enjoy those evenings when I sit there and keep my mouth shut all
So
the time.
Jim, no issues with right or left turns on the Brielle? Okay, just checking.
Anybody here want to hear from the planner? No?
You should
Okay.
speak up more, Mr.
Nobody from the public has any comments for this individual, correct?
The motion to close the hearing.
Well, I'll make a motion to close the hearing for the public comment, and then I'll make a motion to, do you have to make a motion?
That can be
Okay.
a second all in favor.
Okay.
I'll second closing the public hearing.
Okay, so I guess we should now get to the point where somebody wants to make a motion here.
I make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
With the conditions, correct?
With the conditions, right?
Yeah.
And can I make a comment on this?
Yeah.
That I think that this is, as far as our current ordinances are concerned, I think this is self-storage. I think, though, that we should make a recommendation to our council that they revisit our ordinances to account for similar facilities in the future.
Okay.
Okay, good. Somebody seconded, so I guess we can do a roll.
Who seconded it? Mr. Manel?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a nice night. Thanks for the good discussion on the board, everybody.
Send me a brochure.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn?
This is amazing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I could just picture Kim Kardashian.